We still have the ability to target extremely granularly down to, I know I can do based on actions that they're actually applying for mortgages and that their credit score is above a certain amount, how much money their net worth is, if they own other types of real estate. So the options are endless for curating and targeting. Programmatic is really one of the only avenues anymore to be able to keep doing that.
This is Curb Appeal, a podcast for real estate professionals who are looking to build out their business and get more deals done. In each episode, we uncover what is and isn't working when it comes to scaling in the industry. Listen in and get actionable steps to grow your real estate brand, attract more business, and expand your footprint in the industry. Okay, let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of Curb Appeal. I am your host, Rachel Gombosch, and I'm so excited for this week's episode. I am joined with Julianne Martin, who is the co-owner of Above the Fold, a digital marketing and programmatic advertising agency who are helping agents in the real estate industry to really dominate their farm and also to help them stand out during any season of the year. So really excited to get into the details and all of the golden nuggets that Julianne has for you guys. Additionally, if you love the episode, please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Also, we do have a promo code for all of our listeners out there. So any first-time clients with Virtuance who use POD, P-O-D 15 at checkout when you schedule your shoot at virtuance.com will receive 15% off their first order. So be sure to head over to virtuance.com to schedule that shoot. And with that, let's get into the episode. So I want to really kind of just lay the foundation as far as what programmatic advertising is, because I don't think a lot of people really understand that it's a type of marketing or a type of advertising that's out there, I think, especially in the real estate industry. And so really in just blanketed terms, simple, understandable terms, what is programmatic advertising?
Sure. So programmatic advertising is the automated buying and selling of ads and media in real time. And this, you're able to serve ads across the full web, apps, audio or podcast ads, like streaming audio, and also connected TV. So it's all done automated, real time, and it's really easy to do. And so if you compare that to Google or Facebook, those are just in those platforms. And programmatic is similar in that you buy it through technology, but it accesses all those other inventory sources.
Yeah. So if someone's looking like on their Facebook page, what would be like a programmatic ad that pops up and populates in front of them versus just like a standard ad?
Well, on Facebook, those are Facebook ads, and it's similar that it is bought programmatically. It's bought by setting up ads and bids, but it's only on Facebook. So with programmatic, we access the full rest of the web. So if you're on a website and you see a banner ad, or you're on a content site, you're reading a blog and you see an article about a certain product, that's called a native ad. And also pre-roll video. So if you're on a news site and then there's an ad that shows up before you watch the item you wanted to see, that's called a pre-roll video. And then if you're listening to Spotify and you hear a targeted ad of like a website you visited 2 days ago, and it's an audio version of that ad. And then also if you're watching like a show on Peacock or Hulu and you see an advertising there. So it's all those different types of media, but it's not on Facebook and not on like Google PPC, Google search results. That's different as well. But it's all those other mediums, and those could all be programmatic ads. They probably 90% of them are.
Yeah. So let's break down the process of the bidding of programmatic advertising, because I think that's a huge difference from a lot of different ad forms out there. So explain a little bit how that bidding process works.
Sure. So if we think about media buying, maybe if you've been doing this a long time, you used to be able to like call a TV station and say, okay, I want to have a TV ad running during these dates. Or you would contact the New York Times or a local newspaper and say, I want to have an ad on your website. And you used to have to do these IOs that were like, you'd buy that placement. And this is what media buyers would do. It's similar to when you place an ad in a magazine. It used to be like that across the full web. So programmatic was created where you can buy and sell all the inventory from one platform. So you buy from a demand side platform, platform. It's really accessible to everybody. There's a lot of different options. So you place how much you're willing to spend every day, who your target audience is, what types of inventory you want to access. So if you have display ads only, you would only be accessing display inventory. And then you just let it run and it finds your users where they are and makes those bid adjustments in real time. So it's all automated and you just have to make, if that's what our team does is we make adjustments. We kind of see what sites are working well, what ads are working well. We make adjustments based on the performance, and then you just start looking at the results.
Yeah. So what are some tips to win those bids that you've noticed? Are there tips that are consistent through every client that you've ever had, or is it really, it just entirely varies based on who the person is, who their target audience is, what they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, it's really different for everybody and every site. So typically all programmatic is bought on a CPM basis. And that's pretty much every type of advertising, even on Facebook, runs on a CPM.
Yeah.
So
and real quick, what's a CPM?
It's a cost per 1,000 impressions. So if you do Google PPC, that's on a cost per click. If you're trying to get found in the Google search results. But that's pretty much the only inventory I can think of, unless you have some custom thing with an agency that's priced out like that. So if you have, based on your certain budget, and if I know you want to reach a certain audience in say a metro area, and I know how big that audience is, and I know how big your budget is, we figure out what CPM it needs to be in order to be competitive, but also hit your budget. So you kind of just set that, and then the algorithms buy and sell on your behalf based on what all the competition there. So sometimes you'll pay more than that, sometimes you'll pay less than that.
Yeah.
And it evens out, it just evens out to your budget. So
awesome. So let's kind of bring that into real estate, because I know you work with a lot of real estate professionals. One, why do you believe it's so important for real estate professionals to really adopt programmatic advertising? And two, kind of explain what that process looks like as far as what is the content, what do the ads look like for real estate professionals that you're trying to push out through these different ads and through these different bids?
Sure. So let's first start about the types of advertising, or why it's important for real estate professionals to look at programmatic as part of their marketing strategies. So, advertising, as we all know, is one of the most important things an agent can do, and it comes in all shapes and sizes. It could be the billboards, having flyers, postcards. That really personal touch is really important, mostly for realtors to build those relationships and things like that. But we're always looking for ways to differentiate yourselves and your listings, and finding people earlier in the process so that you're not competing for attention right at that point when they're all going head to head with trying to find the realtor for them or buying a home. But maybe when they start their process, when they start thinking about buying a home and they start researching, if you can be there earlier in that process and start building that relationship with them, they start seeing you and maybe different types of ads and messages to them. By the time they get down to that really competitive space where they're literally on the MLM or on websites getting quotes, they already know you a little bit. So it helps not only have these amazing types of reach in advertising, but also you're able to find people earlier on in the process.
Yeah. So what are some pain points that you found? Because I know that is obviously really important to get ahead of the game, right? You need to start building your awareness and you need to start building your brand. And an awesome way to do that is through this programmatic advertising. How do agents go wrong about it? Are there challenges that you've found in dealing with, whether it's a real estate agent, an individual agent, or whether it's maybe a brokerage owner who is managing a team? What are some issues that you found that maybe it's just they don't understand the process necessarily, or maybe they're trying to target the wrong thing, right? Because you're looking at it from a marketing perspective. They're looking at it really from a sales perspective. So how do you come in and kind of answer the challenges that they have and that they bring to you?
So whenever I work with a new agent or brokerage, I also work with new home builders and actual communities and things like that. we just kind of get back to the basics. Like, who are you trying to target, and be very clear on this customer persona? Because I think a lot of times people just start advertising and they don't really understand who exactly am I trying to communicate with? And it might be 2 or 3 different customer personas.
Right.
1, I think understanding that. 2, what are you really trying to accomplish? Yes, you want leads, but not every type of advertising is going to drive a direct lead. Where you're building a funnel. You need to have some things that are more upper funnel, but they do need to feed into something. So I think it's kind of not just having a form on your website, having like a guide about the local area. And if people are starting to research moving to a certain city that you really focus on, if you have the resources that give them like a city guide or the best neighborhoods, and having that type of content that you can use in advertising to actually help educate and give them more information. So not everything is just getting that lead, but getting action points along the way. So maybe they download a white paper and they have to give you their email list or their email address. That's a lead, even though they might not want to buy a home for 6 months, but you at least got something in front of them. They're starting to trust you, and you have that conversation with them before all those other agents do.
Right.
So, and I think a lot of people just want to jump right to like, let's do a ton of advertising and start getting all these leads, but they haven't really built this funnel and haven't really thought it through.
Right. They're trying to get to the bottom of the funnel.
Yes.
When you really have to start at the top and have the appropriate touch points to work your way down to the bottom of the funnel. So just like when you said, you're at that point of it's really competitive. They're ready to buy a house. They're looking at all these different agents. You're right in the mix with them. You've already had a series of touch points and a series of opportunities that you've been presented to be in front of them. You've maybe already assisted them in answering questions that they've already had. You've maybe already assisted them with the guides and templates that you've provided to help them in that buyer journey. So it's really important to help them understand that you have to start at the top of the funnel before you can get to the bottom of the funnel. People don't just immediately buy.
Exactly. And mostly things like homes. I mean, before I bought my home, we started thinking about it 2 or 3 years in advance. And it was kind of like, oh, how much money do we need to save for a down payment? And, when should we start looking? What's the market like? And I didn't really have a realtor reach out to me like, oh, it looks like you're interested in a home, what can I help you with? And maybe I would have bought a home 2 or 3 years earlier. So I think a lot of people get scared about doing brand awareness type things because they think they're going to be spending money on advertising that doesn't have this direct return and direct lead of someone like they want to make a return on investment in 30 days. But if you're able to have a lot of people at that top, it's going to just be feeding in and have, when you'll have more people at the bottom because you invested more at that top, and you're not going to have to work so hard.
Right. Well, and you brought up a great point about when you were in that home buying process of, I probably would have bought my home 2 or 3 years earlier had someone provided those touch points for me and had someone even just taken a chance to offer up like, hey, it looks like you're buying a home. Not even here's all the guides, here's all the templates, but a simple, how can I assist you? Is there any questions you have that like I can help you directly answer while you're in this process,
Exactly.
Right? Again,
I got a ton of mortgage companies like the mortgage companies are great at this. But I wasn't ready yet to do a mortgage, and maybe, if a realtor had been there with really important information and someone to talk to before I felt like they were going to make me apply for a mortgage, But I think it's really important just to look at it. You're building a business, you're building a portfolio of people at all different stages of their life cycle.
Right. And part of that is awareness. I actually was just reading an article it was a LinkedIn post from a content creator, and they were saying how names and building your name and how crucial it essentially is to your business. And your whole point of brand awareness is to get your name out there so often that when people hear it, they can immediately associate you with a form of content or a guide or a template or, being a speaker on something, because that's how often you pushed yourself out there for awareness efforts. It's not necessarily that you were pushing leads at that point. And obviously, any leads you get throughout the process are fantastic to have. But the whole purpose was I'm going to get my name out there so that when you are ready, I've already introduced myself to you without necessarily being right in front of you, introducing myself to you.
Exactly.
And I think that's where, you guys come in programmatic advertising, and where that can help is pushing that brand out there and pushing these professionals and teams out there to get their brand and their name in front of their clients. Again, maybe 2 or 3 years before they're actually ready to buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to talk about some of the logistics behind programmatic advertising. So if I'm a real estate professional or if I'm a team lead and I am really invested in, getting involved in programmatic advertising, this is my time, I'm ready to raise that awareness. What does, the minimum ad spends look like? What does that reach potentially look like? What are the benefits I'm going to see coming out of programmatic advertising?
Yeah. So as far as jumping right into like a minimum ad spend, of course, it's contextual. It's difficult to give a minimum because it goes into what you're trying to do. So, but I can give a certain client a minimum. I think you just have to have a conversation and talk about the goals and the customer persona, because if your customer persona is very wealthy individuals in a very certain geography and you want to have a certain type of goal, then the investment that needs to happen for that goal might be a little bit more aggressive than just a general awareness strategy. So what I would do is, like, I have that conversation and we go through the goals, we go through the customer persona. We also look at what other marketing you've been doing that is working. So, if you're already doing great at referrals and you have a really great like postcard program that you've been seeing a return on, and you're investing things in those, we can you're investing in things that aren't working, we might be able to show you what you can get by bringing that over to programmatic. So we can kind of look at your whole scope and help you know where the gaps are to reach that ultimate goal. So like you can run successful campaigns like this that touch on different ad formats and different advertisers, for under 5,000 or even less than that. But that could be much too low if you want to hit a very aggressive growth goal in a very competitive market. So
yeah. Do you find that, if they do spend lower than 5, it is difficult? Because I would assume to say that, the real estate industry is a very full and competitive market when it comes to just advertising in general. And now you're seeing how agents are trying to get themselves out on social media and creating content and trying to push their content over others. And so in general, it's just a really competitive industry, not only as an actual agent, but also from a marketing standpoint of trying to get your brand out there. So have you found some challenges within that?
Well, I think it's like anything, you can't just go buy programmatic on its own without having a person, if it's a contractor or a consultant or using a company like Above the Fold, to help look at your full marketing scope. Because we focus on programmatic, but I've been doing digital marketing and advertising for 20 years. So if I know so you want people that can not just sell you a tactic, but actually show how it's going to help you fill the gaps. Because if you're doing great, if you're building organic social is huge for realtors, like having that following and building that trust. So if you're focusing all your energy on that, and maybe you've been trying to do paid search or Facebook, and Facebook's just gotten really hard to target, and maybe you're putting money in those platforms and not really seeing a return, I'd want to understand that, because I could do a forecast and show how that investment would work in programmatic, how many people exactly I'd be able to reach every month, what the average click-through rate will be, and then based on the goal, if it's a call or form fill, we'd be able to forecast it out and try to really show what you would get for the investment and then optimize towards that.
Yeah. Can you give an example or speak to like maybe an agent or an individual agent or maybe even a team that you've helped, where just the point at which they started when they came to you, and then where you were able to get them by utilizing programmatic advertising strategies and helping them to understand their marketing strategies so that they can get that larger reach?
Yeah, 1 second. I want to have some stats here. So
yes, we love stats.
Stats. I'm a data geek. So So yeah, we had a real estate agent who she was local and focused on luxury real estate. So it was the higher income type of properties. And she wanted to increase awareness for the property. So actually advertising the property available and trying to get leads for that property. So of course, she did already have a good name in the industry, but so she had that to build on.
Yeah.
But wanted to drive potential buyers for these specific properties and fill out forms on her website. So in that sense, we were utilizing geofencing technology and other programmatic tactics, and we wanted to reach this very target audience. So we built a comprehensive strategy around just different ways to identify people that would be in her persona. So they needed to be a certain income. They needed to maybe own another type of property. And so we built out this type of strategy and then had different ways of reaching them throughout the web. But we built targets around local affluent neighborhoods because in this community, the people likely to buy these new homes would be just people already in the area that are like upgrading or moving to this new community. Yeah. So we actually geofenced, which is you take satellite data and we're able to draw a line on the map around a certain area. And only people that go into that area would ever see the ads. And so we know that they live or at least visit affluent neighborhoods. And then we layer on some other types of targeting, like content they might be reading, or kind of just indicates that they might be looking to buy another home. So you build on like location and behavioral data. So we built out this very niche audience. And then throughout the course of the campaign, we just saw what types of tactics were working and what types of advertising was working. And ultimately, we were able to optimize that and start seeing good traffic on her site and leads from there. Yeah. So that was one example. And I mean, it was definitely like a more comprehensive example, but previous to that, it was really just she had relied on her network and to just kind of build from there and just needed to get some new eyes on this that she didn't really have direct relationship with.
Yeah. But that brings up a great point of, your organic social can be a huge help for you. And obviously it's there to help you build your brand and raise awareness. But if you're really serious about your marketing strategies and gaining really good reach and also really quality, potential clients and leads, right?
Yeah.
Adding that additional layer of programmatic advertising, where in this case, I think is a great example of it doesn't necessarily have to just be your own personal content that you're pushing out. Like it doesn't have to be the guides. It doesn't necessarily have to be a workbook. You can actually target for your listings themselves.
Yes.
In this case, the luxury, where I know I've got a really high quality home. I want to make sure that the audience who are pulling in for it is qualified for it and they're serious about it to the best of our abilities for us to manage that, right?
Yeah.
So that's where programmatic advertising can come in, is it can really help you to attract that right audience really down to like the nitty gritty of what you're looking for.
Exactly. Yeah, because unfortunately, a lot of the other channels for advertising, like Facebook, you can't do any types of demographic targeting, income level. And there's a reason for that. It was abused by companies. They took advantage of it. But programmatic, because it's open web, there's a lot of transparency and it's led the way for privacy, that we still have the ability to target extremely granularly down to, I know I can do based on actions that they're actually applying for mortgages and that their credit score is above a certain amount, how much money their net worth is, if they own other types of real estate. So if, the options are endless for curating and targeting, where if you go to Facebook, you really have to set it. You can do some interest-based, but you have to do 18 to 65. You can't really set any type of location geo-targeting, and you just kind of leave it up to Facebook to take it and find your people, and then you don't even get the insights for what they were. It's very basic. So you need to have those insights to know what's working, and programmatic is really one of the only avenues anymore to be able to keep doing that.
Right. And I mean, you brought up a great point that a lot of these other platforms that are being pushed onto professionals to use are very limited in their targeting. And any targeting is great. Any targeting is fantastic to have, right? It gets you closer to the audience you want to reach. But at the end of the day, if you are really trying to get down to the nitty gritty of a specific clientele, programmatic advertising can really come in and help help you
Yep.
get to that next level of your target audience.
Yes. It's really fantastic.
Yeah. I want to ask, what is the most maybe unique targeting, either maybe unique audience you've had to target, or maybe just unique format of advertising that you've gone through with a real estate professional?
Huh. So one is, I think when you try to get people that are at that beginning phases, it's like, who is more likely to maybe want to sell their home in the next few months? So there's things like who might be getting a divorce,
Oh, yes.
or whose kids are about to graduate, who has teenagers and they're going to be empty nesters.
Yeah.
And so trying to curate these types of lifestyle changes that are happening that have nothing to really do with that they're looking for real estate, but they might be likely to,
Yeah. There's a chance.
Yeah. So it's been kind of fun when we're able to get creative like that, because we can test out these different types of audiences. And then it's how we reach them. Connected TV is one of the biggest growth opportunities in programmatic as more people cut the cord of traditional cable and just watch streaming TV. I mean, I don't even have cable anymore. I don't know anybody that does.
I don't know. I use all the streaming platforms.
Yeah.
I think I have all of them.
Right. So, but we are able to serve a TV ad, connected TV, and then because of the data, it's a digital, just like any type of digital. You know who was in the room when it played, who watched it, who was on their phone during that TV channel, and then you can retarget them after they watch that commercial with other types of advertising. And so you're able to really have this exciting multi-touch channel with different messages. Yeah. So not only is it a really targeted audience, but you can have so many other types of advertisements and messages. And so, it's fun when you're able to get to that scale, but it's still not, I think people think connected TV, they're thinking tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, this is under $10,000 a month, maybe even $5,000 a month as a minimum to serve TV ads, and then be able to actually know what happened after that. Did they come to your website? If you're doing geofencing at all and you want to know if they're coming to your brokerage or a location or maybe an open house, you can geofence an area and know if there's foot traffic. So there's just a ton of ways to measure. And so you're not really splattering advertisements out there that you don't really know how they're doing.
Right. So this is how, when you are talking with someone or you Google something and all of a sudden you're on a platform and an ad pops up, this is how it happens.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're I just said that 3 seconds ago to my friend, and now I'm getting ads about it. How? This is why.
Yeah. Even me, and I'm in the industry, sometimes I'm I know I never searched for that. I know I just talked about it. I think there are still some things about Facebook that and Google, we don't really know. But
right.
But it can even be there's lookalike audiences. So if people, and we all kind of learn things through other people talking about it or having been near something that it kind of triggers memory. So you might not even know that you had been doing something that says you might be likely to do this next thing, and it's the algorithms are so good at guessing a lot of the times.
It's that computer technology.
Yeah.
It understands. It gets us.
Yeah.
But it's because we're giving them a lot of information, right?
We are.
So
yep. It's just
it works both ways. So I want to talk a little bit about just kind of the seasons maybe that you've seen in the advertising industry and in the digital marketing space. So obviously we're starting to move into a slower season for real estate agents. There are less listings on the market. How can programmatic advertising really help them stand out from the crowd in these slower markets, slower seasons?
Yeah, I think it's really about taking the idea away about, okay, I can do advertising now, but maybe my objective is going to be different than in that really competitive season. And that really competitive season, not only it's because buyers or, whatever, if buyer and sellers are out there actively taking action. And so you need to be there to capture them at that bottom, right?
Yeah.
But so if everybody stops advertising because it's slow, all your competitors stop advertising because it's slow, what can you do to start taking advantage of lower costs, be less competition? Use this time to build up that brand awareness, and you could probably do it for a lot cheaper than if you're doing it all during that competitive busy season. So I think this is a time to build out content that can be helpful at those what's called like awareness and consideration phases of the funnel. And so it's not necessarily all advertising. I've done content creation and social media as well. So I think on those slower times, if you double down on getting great content and resources, social media presence, and you can have some advertising, definitely like top of funnel, have something that's kind of evergreen that you can test out different messages. You can use this time to test out like different tip sheets or neighborhood guides and things like that. And so then when it's busy season and it starts getting really competitive, you actually have some data telling you what's going to work. So that's what I would recommend. It's like, if you're not doing advertisement, some of your competitors might, but ultimately it's kind of a great time to start learning, and it's going to build that funnel earlier on because, maybe people aren't wanting to buy right now because I know like interest rates are really high right now in 2022 in September. Mm-hmm. Right. So they might be waiting, but they still, if someone is talking to them right now and they start trusting someone right now, when they're ready to take action, then you're good. You're good to go.
Right.
You're there right with them. You don't have to go and compete with everybody.
Exactly. So what are some of those tools and resources if, a team or even just an individual, if they wanted to start really getting serious about their advertising techniques and strategies, what would you recommend to them on how they can get started? Because obviously this is, again, a very detailed, type of marketing. And so they might not necessarily understand everything that goes into it, but what's like a good starting point for anyone who's interested in really investing in programmatic advertising?
I think it's taking a few days, or even if you like, we do this growth analysis where we help people do this before we start talking about the media plan. But you can do this yourself, as you have to understand your customer persona. And I know for realtors that might change with the type of listings you have. So if you get a luxury real estate, like your customer persona is going to change trying to sell that versus, more average homes or like townhomes and things like that. But I think trying to understand that as an aggregate and understand the type of client you want, and if the types of homes you typically sell or that are in your area, because if you want to launch advertising or you come to an agency and you want to know that, like my best clients are ones that hand me a customer persona and says, this is who we want to reach. And they actually name it sometimes, like Sarah Jenks, and she's this age and she loves these hobbies and she has this type of home and, she's married with no, it can get really granular, but that's going to make your advertising so much more successful. And then you can see that the agency you work with come back with a plan that fits that. And also you just have to understand, what are you willing to pay to get a new customer? Like, what return do you have to see? And I think you just have to kind of know your finances a little bit. So I think just planning about that. And if this is hard for someone to do, like, we help people do this, but you can also find some good resources or like business managers and talk about that. But yeah, if someone came to me and they had no idea about that, I would take a step back and really talk through that and make sure they really understand that, because too often we start like I've done this in the past and previous agencies, you just kind of start running an advertisement and they're like, oh, I'm getting all these leads and they're not the type of person I want, or they're not targeted for me. And, there is information that wasn't shared at the beginning. So I think
it goes a lot into the preparation.
It's a lot of the preparation. It really is. And yeah, the budget I think, and if you know that, your budget can be a lot more effective. Like, you probably don't need to spend as much, because a lot of times people, if they say, I don't know who my customer is and I have to use advertising to figure it out, you're going to have to spend a lot of money to like do broader targeting and test maybe 5 or 6 different types of personas. And then you just have to see which of them are engaging with your ads. And you're going to get that information, but it's just going to take a lot of time and effort to do that. You always want to be testing kind of but I think it's also being open to testing too, because you might know or think you know who your customer persona is. But if you are okay with a little bit of testing beyond that, like, let's actually try, if you think it's like people that are under 50 or with kids, like, let's just try a little bit older than that and like maybe a little bit empty nesters and just do a test and see how it does. You might be surprised.
Well, it could be your base, the base of your customer profile it is what it is. It's foundational. But again, it's those different variables of, it might not be, people 30 to 40. It might be people 40 to 50, right? Yeah. And it's just a slight difference in age, but that can really help you when you consider generating leads and the type of people you're looking for. And again, back to the point of advertising and targeting, if those are going to be the qualified leads you get that you want, then you need to know that, right? And that's where testing comes in is, well, if the leads you're getting from the profile you think is right and you think is the bright target audience you want, but it's not the qualified leads, right? You're not getting those leads that you want, but then you just change a variable and now all of a sudden you're getting the leads that you had originally imagined. That's where programmatic advertising can really help you out. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the preparation and at least having that ideal customer profile base prepared.
Yeah, the preparation you can do, like what you want to see out of it, what your goals are, that's part of building up a successful campaign.
Yeah. So real quick, before we wrap up, I want to talk about if there's one piece of information that you want everyone to leave with when it comes to programmatic advertising or digital media, what would that golden nugget be?
I think it's really understanding who you are as a company and what you want to bring to your client base and being able to build a strong message around that. So it's not only understanding who your customers are, but really defining you as a realtor, what your differentiators are, and kind of why you want to, like, what your North Star is and what you want to do in your business. Because I think that passion and bringing that into everything you do and growing your business is going to make this a lot of fun, because ultimately advertising and real estate and growing businesses and helping people buy homes is really fun. Yeah. And I like kind of thinking about why you're doing this, what you want to accomplish, and bringing that into everything that you do.
Yeah. Great answer. Fantastic. And then where can our audience connect with you? Where can people find you?
Well, our website is getabovethefold.com. And you can reach us there. We also are building up our audience on TikTok if you want to check that out. So, we're on LinkedIn and Facebook and all that as well. But we're Programmatic Ads on TikTok, and we just do some fun videos. We kind of use it as a stress reliever.
Yeah.
Fun
that's
day.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, but it's so we're there. You can see Jessica and I, we own this company. We're a woman-owned business, and so we're on Programmatic Ads on TikTok or just getabovethefold.com.
Fantastic. Julianne, thank you so much for joining us. This was an awesome conversation. And I hope people really saw the value that programmatic advertising can really bring to elevate their business, get them through a slow season, get them through this competitive market. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Hopefully I had some good tips for everybody.
Sure did. I learned a lot, that's for sure.
Good.
Thanks for listening to Curb Appeal. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow along on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. This podcast is brought to you by Virtuance. Whether you market one listing a year or thousands, Virtuance is your go-to real estate photographer for consistent, magazine-quality images that are scientifically proven to get results. For more episodes of Curb Appeal, please visit virtuance.com/podcast.